The 10-second miracle. Dominic Vasquez sat in his bulletproof Mercedes S-Class outside the iron gates of his own estate at 2:47 a.m., unable to move. The mansion sprawled before him like a prison built from his own wealth. 12,000 square feet of white marble and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Biscayne Bay, worth $30 million, and every penny of it felt like blood money now. He was the man who controlled Miami's underworld, the name that made city officials nervous and rival cartels think twice, the voice that could move $50 million with a single encrypted phone call. He had politicians in his pocket, judges on his payroll, and enough firepower to start a small war. But he couldn't make his 4-year-old daughter say a single word. 18 months of silence since that night. 18 months since armed men broke into his home while he was away handling business, since they tortured his wife Elena in front of their daughter, since Sophia watched her mother's screams turn to whimpers as vertebrae shattered under steel-toed boots. Elena survived, but would never walk again. Sophia survived, but stopped talking entirely. And no amount of money could buy back the voice of a traumatized child. Dominic had tried everything. Dr. Catherine Moore from Stanford's Pediatric Psychiatric Unit, 6 months of cognitive behavioral therapy, art therapy, play therapy, all delivered with impeccable credentials, and a $300,000 bill. Sophia sat through every session like a statue, those enormous brown eyes staring through the toys and coloring books as if they didn't exist. Dr. Yael Schwartz from Tel Aviv, renowned for working with child survivors of conflict zones, 3 months of specialized EMDR therapy, cutting-edge neurological interventions, $500,000 in fees, plus flying her entire team to Miami twice monthly. Sophia let them wave lights in front of her eyes, let them tap her shoulders in rhythmic patterns, and never spoke a single syllable. The Swiss clinic in Zurich that promised experimental treatments combining pharmaceuticals with intensive immersion therapy, 2 months in their facility, $800,000 for round-the-clock care, in a place that looked like a resort but felt like a hospital. Sophia came back thinner, more withdrawn, flinching at every sudden movement. Even Dr. Marcus fucking Chen, the celebrity child whisperer, who'd written 3 best-selling books and appeared on morning shows teaching parents how to connect with troubled kids, $1.2 million for 8 weeks of his revolutionary attachment-based protocols. Sophia sat in his office while he performed his award-winning techniques and stared at the wall as if he were invisible. $4,300,000. 18 months. The best specialist money could buy anywhere on earth. And his daughter still hadn't said a word. Dominic pressed his forehead against the steering wheel, the leather cool against his skin. The engine ticked as it cooled, the only sound besides his own ragged breathing and the distant crash of waves against the seawall. He was about to force himself out of the car when he heard it. A child's voice, high and clear, drifting through the humid Miami night from somewhere near the front gate. 1. Dominic's head snapped up, his heart hammered against his ribs. 2. He knew that voice. He'd been waiting 18 months to hear it again. 3. Sophia. Dominic was out of the car before conscious thought caught up with instinct, running toward the gate where the guardhouse sat, bathed in yellow security lights. His hand moved automatically to the Glock tucked against his spine, every protective instinct screaming that someone had his daughter, someone was. Breathe. The word came out steady, calm, followed by the sound of a long exhale. Dominic rounded the corner and froze. Sophia sat cross-legged on the concrete beside the guardhouse, her small frame nearly swallowed by the pink pajamas she wore. Her dark curls were loose around her shoulders, her bare feet tucked under her legs. And beside her, sitting with his back against the guardhouse wall in a faded security uniform, was Marcus Wright, the night shift gateman, 62 years old, black, weathered face lined with decades of hard living. The man Dominic paid $12 an hour to check IDs and open gates. Marcus had his eyes closed, one gnarled hand raised with fingers extended. 4. Sophia's voice was small but clear. 5. 6. Hold, Marcus said softly, his voice carrying the gravel of a lifetime of cigarettes before he'd quit. Hold it right there, baby girl. Feel that. Sophia nodded, her chest still, her whole body focused on the breath she was holding. Now let it go. Slow. Like you're blowing out birthday candles but you don't want the wish to fly away too fast. Sophia exhaled, long and controlled, and Dominic watched his daughter's shoulders drop from the tense hunch they'd carried for 18 months. That's 10 seconds, Marcus said, opening his eyes to look at her with a gentleness that made Dominic's throat tighten. You did it perfect. How you feel? Less scared, Sophia whispered. 2 words. The first 2 words Dominic had heard from his daughter in a year and a half, and they were spoken to a minimum wage security guard at 3 in the morning. Marcus nodded like she'd said the most important thing in the world. That's the magic of it. 10 seconds. You can survive anything. Used to do this myself when the bad dreams came. Still do sometimes. You have bad dreams too. Sophia's voice was barely audible. Every night for 20 years, baby girl. Every single night. Marcus reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a harmonica, worn and dented. But I learned a trick. You wanna hear? Sophia nodded. Marcus brought the harmonica to his lips and began to play, a slow, achingly sweet melody that Dominic didn't recognize. Some old lullaby, played with the kind of tenderness that spoke of practice, of nights spent playing this same song to someone who mattered. Sophia listened, her body relaxing further with each note, and then she did something that made Dominic's knees nearly buckle. She hummed along, not words, but sound, musical, alive, engaged. His daughter was making sound for the first time since that terrible night, harmonizing with a man who made $12 an hour and wore a uniform that was 2 sizes too big. The song ended, and Marcus lowered the harmonica. My daughter used to love that one. Before she passed. What was her name? Sophia asked. Maria. She was 8. You would have liked her. Dominic stood in the shadows beyond the security light's reach, tears streaming down his face for the first time since Melissa's funeral 2 years ago. He'd spent over $4 million on specialists with degrees from the finest institutions on Earth. He'd flown his daughter to 3 continents, subjected her to treatments that promised miracles, backed by peer-reviewed research and clinical trials. And a 62-year-old Gateman had reached her in 10 seconds with a breathing technique and a harmonica. One more time? Sophia asked, her voice small but hopeful in a way Dominic hadn't heard since before the invasion. As many times as you need, baby girl. Marcus raised his hand again. Ready? 1. Dominic watched his daughter count, watched her breathe, watched her slowly learn that surviving fear was possible, from a man who understood trauma not from textbooks, but from living through it himself. And he understood, finally, why all his money had failed. You couldn't buy healing. You couldn't purchase understanding. You couldn't hire someone to recognize the specific terror in a child's eyes because they'd seen the same terror in the mirror every morning for 20 years. Sophia needed someone who knew what drowning felt like and had learned how to keep breathing anyway. She needed Marcus Wright, not because he was educated or credentialed or expensive, but because he was broken in exactly the right way to help her survive her own breaking. 3. Breathe. Dominic wiped his eyes and stepped out of the shadows. Time to find out who this man really was, and why a simple 10-second breathing exercise had accomplished what $4 million couldn't. Chapter 1. Dominic Vasquez didn't believe in miracles. He believed in leverage, in pressure points, in the kind of power that made men forget their principles. But watching Marcus Wright teach his daughter to breathe, really breathe, not the shallow gasps Sophia had survived on for 18 months, felt like witnessing something his money had no right to touch. The morning sun turned Biscayne Bay into liquid gold as Dominic stood at his office window, phone pressed to his ear. I don't care what the union contract says, Rodriguez. Triple his salary. No. 10 times. And I want his wife, moved to that place in Coral Gables, the one with the memory care wing that looks like a resort. Today. Marcus hadn't asked for any of it. That was what unsettled Dominic most. The old man had simply nodded when Dominic offered him the position as Sophia's personal companion, his weathered face betraying nothing. As if jumping from $12 an hour to a 6-figure salary was just another sunrise to endure. Most people would have grinned, thanked him profusely, shown some recognition that their life had fundamentally changed. Marcus had just squeezed Dominic's hand once, firm grip, calloused palm, and said, I'll do right by her. But Dominic wasn't a man who handed over his daughter to strangers, no matter how miraculous their 10-second breathing tricks seemed. He made a call. By noon, a file landed on his desk. 3 inches thick. Marcus Theodore Wright, born 1964 in Birmingham, Alabama. Enlisted Marines at 18. 2 tours in Afghanistan. Honorable discharge. Married to Patricia Wright in 1995. 1 daughter, Maria Elizabeth Wright, born 1997. Then the page that made Dominic's chest tighten. House fire, March 2005. Marcus deployed overseas. Patricia Wright, age 38, died of smoke inhalation. Maria Wright, age 8, died of smoke inhalation. Faulty electrical wiring. Marcus returned from Kandahar to closed caskets and a VA therapist who spent the next decade teaching him how to want to stay alive. The file included therapy notes. Dominic's investigator was thorough, probably illegal, definitely expensive. Pages and pages of a broken man learning to breathe. Combat breathing technique introduced month 4. Patient shows marked improvement in managing acute PTSD episodes. Counts to 10, holds, releases. Says it's the only thing that stops the nightmares of arriving home to ashes. Dominic read every word. The suicide attempt in 2007. The slow crawl back. The second marriage to Rose in 2012. A hospice nurse who understood trauma, who held him through the nightmares. Her Alzheimer's diagnosis in 2020. Marcus taking the night shift security job because the quiet darkness didn't remind him of the things he'd lost. Because the pay covered Rose's nursing home in Hialeah. Because being alone with his thoughts at a gate was better than being alone with them in the house that no longer felt like home. The lullaby Marcus whistled to Sophia. Dominic had heard it, haunting and sweet. The investigator's note. Same song played at Maria Wright's funeral. You Are My Sunshine. Patient reportedly hasn't sung it since his daughter's death, but hums it occasionally during stress episodes. Dominic closed the file. His hands were shaking. All those specialists. The Stanford psychiatrist, with her cognitive behavioral protocols. The Tel Aviv trauma expert, with his EMDR therapy and precisely calibrated exposure techniques. The Swiss clinic, with experimental medications that cost more than most people earned in a year. They'd seen Sophia's selective mutism as a puzzle to solve, a disorder to treat, a condition requiring intervention. Marcus had seen a terrified child who'd watched violence destroy her safe world, and he'd recognized her because he'd been her. He hadn't tried to fix Sophia. He'd just taught her what kept him alive. How to count to 10 when your lungs forgot how to work. How to hold the breath until the terror passed. How to release it and prove to yourself you could do it again. Dominic had spent $4 million on expertise. Marcus had offered survival. The intercom buzzed. Mr. Vasquez. Marcus Wright is here. Send him in. Marcus entered like he was apologizing for existing. Shoulders slightly hunched, eyes down. The posture of a man who'd spent 20 years making himself smaller, so the world wouldn't notice him enough to hurt him again. He wore the same faded uniform from his security job. Hadn't changed despite Dominic's instructions, that he didn't need to work the gate anymore. Sit down, Marcus. The old man sat carefully, as if afraid the leather chair might charge him rent. Dominic slid the file across the desk. I had you investigated. I know what happened to your family. I know about the fire, about Maria, about your wife Rose. I know why you know how to teach a traumatized 4-year-old how to breathe. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. You want me to leave? What? No. Dominic leaned forward. I want to understand. All these specialists, all this money, and you, a gateman making minimum wage. You reach my daughter in 10 seconds. How? I wasn't trying to reach her. Marcus's voice was quiet, roughened by decades of cigarettes he'd quit after the fire, because Maria had asked him to. I was just. She has this look in her eyes. Same look I saw in the mirror for 10 years after I lost Maria. Like she's watching herself from somewhere far away, trying to figure out if she wants to come back. And the breathing? It's all I got. Marcus spread his hands, scarred knuckles, trembling fingers. When the nightmares come, when I can't remember why I survived when they didn't, I count. 1 through 10. It don't fix nothing, Mr. Vasquez. It just gets you through the next 10 seconds. And then you do it again. And eventually you've breathed your way through another day. Dominic felt something crack open in his chest. The lullaby you whistle. That was Maria's song. Yeah. Marcus's eyes glistened. Haven't sung it since we buried her. Couldn't. But when I saw Sophia, when I saw that same look, I don't know. It just came out. Like Maria was telling me it's okay to use it to help someone else now. Your wife Rose, she's in that facility in Hialeah? Yes, sir. Advanced Alzheimer's. She don't know who I am most days, but I visit every morning, before my shift. Talk to her about the weather, about the birds outside her window. She smiles sometimes. That's enough. Not anymore. Dominic pulled out his phone, typed rapidly. I'm having her transferred to Coral Gables Memory Care. Private suite, specialized staff, therapy programs. It's covered. Marcus started to stand. Mr. Vasquez, I can't. Yes, you can. And you will. Dominic's voice carried the weight of a man who'd built an empire on making people listen. Because my daughter speaks when she's with you. Because you understand what $4 million in specialists couldn't teach me. That trauma doesn't need expertise. It needs recognition from someone who survived their own hell and learned how to keep breathing. Marcus sat back down slowly, tears tracking down his weathered face. You start tomorrow, Dominic said. 6 figures a year to be Sophia's companion. To teach her that breathing through fear is possible. To show her that broken people can still be the ones who save you. I'm nobody, Marcus whispered. Just a beat-up old Marine who couldn't save his own family. No, Dominic stood, walked around the desk, gripped Marcus's shoulder. You're the man who learned to survive when surviving seemed impossible. You're exactly who Sophia needs. You're exactly who I should have been looking for all along. Marcus looked up, and for the first time, something like hope flickered in those haunted eyes. I won't let her down. I know. Dominic squeezed once, then released him. Now go home, rest. Tomorrow you teach my daughter that the people who matter aren't the ones with degrees and credentials. They're the ones who show up and teach you how to breathe when the world is drowning you. As Marcus left, Dominic turned back to the window, watching the bay shimmer in the afternoon light. He'd built an empire on violence and intimidation, on the belief that money and power could solve everything. A 62-year-old Gateman with PTSD and a dead daughter had just proven him wrong. And somehow, impossibly, that felt like the first honest truth Dominic had encountered in years. Chapter 2. The first week, Sophia didn't speak at all. She just sat beside Marcus on the wooden bench outside the security gate, her small hands folded in her lap, those brown eyes staring at nothing, while the ocean breeze carried salt and the promise of storms. Marcus didn't push. He'd learned patience in VA waiting rooms, in the years after the fire when getting out of bed felt like climbing Everest. He just sat with her, breathing slowly, counting under his breath. 1, 2, 3, breathe, 4, 5, 6, hold. On day 8, Sophia's lips moved. No sound, but her mouth shaped the numbers with his. Dominic watched from his office window, binoculars pressed to his face, like some kind of desperate voyeur. His daughter, his silent, unreachable daughter, was counting. Not speaking, not yet, but participating. Acknowledging that someone existed beside her in the suffocating bubble trauma had built around her world. She's doing it again, he said into his phone. Elena's voice came through weak, but steady. The paralysis had taken her legs, but she was fighting her way back to speech, syllable by painful syllable. Let them be. Marcus knows what he's doing. Dominic lowered the binoculars. His wife was right. He'd spent 18 months trying to orchestrate his daughter's recovery like a hostile takeover. Strategic, expensive, overwhelming. Marcus was doing the opposite. He was just there, present, breathing. Week 2, Sophia whispered. 3. Marcus smiled. Not the broad, enthusiastic grin the specialists had tried. The kind that demanded reciprocation and made Sophia retreat further into herself. Just a small upturn of his weathered mouth, an acknowledgement. That's right, baby girl. 3. You got it. She said it again, stronger. 3. Now 4. 4. They sat there for an hour, counting to 10 over and over, Sophia's voice growing from whisper to something almost solid. When her nanny came to collect her for lunch, Sophia looked back at Marcus, and for the first time in 18 months, she waved. Dominic cried at his desk. Actually cried, tears soaking into the police reports he'd been reviewing, blurring the ink on witness statements about a homicide in Overtown. His daughter had waved. Such a small thing. Children waved at strangers, in grocery stores, at passing cars, at dogs. But Sophia hadn't waved at anyone since the nightmen with guns had invaded her home and made her mother scream. Now she waved at a 62-year-old Gateman who understood that trauma lived in your bones, and breathing was the only rent you could pay to keep existing in your own skin. By week 3, Sophia started arriving at the gate on her own. She'd slip out of the mansion in the early evening when the Miami heat finally broke, padding barefoot across the manicured lawn in her yellow sundress, clutching the stuffed rabbit she'd had the night of the invasion. The nannies learned to let her go. Dominic had made it clear. Wherever Sophia wanted to be, that's where she stayed. Marcus would be waiting, whistling softly. You Are My Sunshine. The same song he'd hummed at Maria's funeral. The melody he'd locked away for 20 years, because it hurt too much to remember his daughter had loved it. Sophia sat closer now, not quite touching, but near enough that her shoulder almost brushed his arm. My mama can't walk, she said one evening, apropos of nothing. Marcus nodded. I know, baby girl. Bad men hurt her. I know. Are you going to hurt me? The question landed like a grenade. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and Dominic, watching from the window again, he couldn't help himself, held his breath. No, Marcus said finally. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just going to sit here and teach you how to breathe. That okay? Sophia considered this. Why do I need to learn? I already know how. Well, Marcus looked out at the bay, at the boats cutting white lines through blue water. Sometimes when scary things happen, we forget. Our bodies remember to breathe, but we forget how to make it feel okay. So we practice. We count to 10, and we prove to ourselves we can do it. And then we do it again. Did you forget how to breathe? Yeah. Long time ago I forgot real bad. What made you remember? Marcus's throat worked. A doctor who was real patient with me, who sat with me just like I'm sitting with you, and taught me it was okay to be scared. That being scared didn't mean I was broken. Sophia reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were so small, so fragile. I'm scared all the time. I know, baby girl. Marcus squeezed gently. That's why we practice. 1, 2, 3, breathe. She joined him. 4, 5, 6, hold. They finished together. 7, 8, 9, release. 10. Week 4. Sophia asked about Maria. They were sitting on the bench as the sun set, painting the sky in colors that reminded Dominic of the expensive art he collected, but never looked at. Sophia had been quiet for a while, just listening to Marcus whistle, and then she said, "Do you have kids?" Marcus's whistling stopped. Dominic saw his shoulders tense, saw the old Marine prepare for impact, the way he probably had in Kandahar, when the radio crackled warnings about incoming fire. "I had a daughter once," Marcus said softly. "Her name was Maria. Where is she?" "She died, sweetheart. Long time ago. There was a fire." Sophia processed this with the brutal honesty of 4-year-olds who'd seen too much too young. "Were you sad?" "Sadder than I knew a person could be." "Are you still sad?" "Sometimes. But less now. Because I learned to breathe through it. And because sitting here with you, teaching you the things I wish I could have taught her, it helps." Sophia leaned against his arm then, fully against him, her small body trusting his in a way that made Dominic's chest ache. "I'm sorry your Maria died. I'm sorry you had to see bad things happen to your mama." "Marcus? Yeah, baby girl? If I learn to breathe really good, will the bad men go away?" God. The question destroyed him. Dominic could see it in the way Marcus's hand trembled, the way he had to swallow 3 times before he could answer. "The bad men are already gone, Sophia. Your daddy made sure of that. But the scary feelings they left behind, those take longer. That's what the breathing is for. Not to make them go away, but to help you be okay even when they show up. You understand?" She nodded against his arm. "Can we practice again?" "We can practice as many times as you need." Week 5, Sophia laughed. It happened so suddenly that Marcus startled. He'd been telling her about Rose, about how his wife forgot things now but still loved the birds that visited her window at the care facility. "She calls them all Gerald," he said. "Every single bird. Pigeons, pelicans, that one seagull that tries to steal her cookies. All Geralds." Sophia giggled. Actually giggled. A sound like silver bells, like hope, like everything Dominic had spent $4 million chasing. "That's silly," she said, still smiling. "Birds can't all be named Gerald." "Well, you try telling Rose that." Marcus was grinning now too. "She's real convinced." The laughter faded, but the smile remained, and Sophia said, "I want to meet Rose. Can I meet her?" "If your daddy says it's okay, I'd love that." Dominic arranged it for the following Saturday. He drove them himself, Marcus in the passenger seat, Sophia in the back, chattering about the Geralds, and watched as his daughter brought flowers to a woman who didn't remember her own husband but smiled anyway, and called Sophia such a pretty Gerald. On the drive home, Sophia fell asleep against Marcus's shoulder in the back seat. Dominic caught Marcus's eye in the rearview mirror. "Thank you," Dominic said quietly. "For what?" "For teaching her that broken people can still be safe. That survival is worth learning." Marcus looked down at Sophia, at the trust written in her sleeping face. "She's teaching me that, too, Mr. Vasquez. She's reminding me that the things I learned in hell can help someone find their way out of theirs." Week 6. Sophia spoke in full sentences. She told Marcus about the nightmares, about how the bad men's faces came back when she closed her eyes. She asked if counting to 10 would make them go away, and he told her no, but it would make them smaller, more manageable, something she could breathe around instead of something that suffocated her. She practiced every day, sometimes for hours, and slowly, deliberately, Sophia came back. Dominic watched it happen from his window, from his office, from wherever he could observe without interfering. He watched Marcus give his daughter what no specialist could provide: recognition. Not treatment, not therapy. Just honest acknowledgement from someone who'd survived his own nightmare and learned that breathing through it, 10 seconds at a time, was the only way forward. And late at night, when his empire demanded violence, and his conscience demanded something different, Dominic stood at his window and watched the security gate, where a minimum-wage gateman had accomplished what millions couldn't. He watched, and he learned that some things can't be bought. Some things can only be given by people who've earned them in the currency of survival. Chapter 3. Isabella Cruz stood in the doorway of Sophia's bedroom, watching the child sleep with a smile that never reached her eyes. The night light cast shadows across Sophia's face, peaceful now, unburdened by the nightmares that had been so reliable for 18 months. That was the problem. "She's doing so much better," the new nanny whispered, hovering behind Isabella like an anxious ghost. "Mr. Wright has been wonderful with her. She actually ate all her dinner tonight and asked for seconds." Isabella's smile tightened. "How lovely." She closed the door softly, her Louboutins clicking against the marble as she walked toward her suite, the one she'd claimed on the mansion's second floor after the invasion, after Elena had been wheeled away paralyzed and broken, after Isabella had positioned herself as the grieving sister stepping up to help family in crisis. 18 months of careful work. 18 months of whispering to Sophia that the bad men might come back, of leaving doors slightly ajar at night so the child never felt safe, of accidentally letting news broadcasts about violence play just loud enough for Sophia to hear. Small things, subtle things. The kind of psychological terrorism no one would ever trace back to a concerned aunt who seemed so devoted to her traumatized niece. And now some minimum-wage gateman was undoing it all with breathing exercises and lullabies. Isabella poured herself a whiskey, Dominic's expensive Japanese single malt, the kind that cost more than Marcus probably made in a month back when he was just security. She'd thought the specialist would fail. She'd counted on it. Rich men always believed money could solve problems, and watching Dominic throw millions at useless experts had been delicious. Each failure had driven Sophia deeper into silence, had made the child more dependent on Isabella's comfort, had positioned Isabella closer to controlling the Vasquez empire through a traumatized 4-year-old who would need a guardian for years to come. The plan had been perfect. Elena was paralyzed, effectively neutralized. Dominic was consumed with guilt and desperation. Sophia was the heir to everything, and Isabella was her closest female relative, her primary caretaker, the aunt who'd sacrificed everything to help. All she'd had to do was wait for the right moment to suggest that Dominic step back, let her manage things, that he was too volatile, too dangerous, that Sophia needed stability, and Isabella could provide it. And then this old man with his breathing tricks had walked in and started teaching Sophia to heal. Isabella's phone buzzed. A text from her contact in the Morales cartel, the same people she'd given security details to 18 months ago, the ones who'd executed the home invasion that was supposed to kill Elena but had only paralyzed her. A complication, but not a fatal one. The message was brief. Heard the kid is talking. That wasn't the deal. No, it wasn't. The deal had been simple. Isabella would help them strike at Dominic's family, create chaos, position herself to eventually broker peace, and take control of territories Dominic wouldn't negotiate. In exchange, they'd support her claim to manage the Vasquez empire once Dominic inevitably destroyed himself with revenge and violence. A traumatized, silent heir made that transition easier. A daughter who couldn't speak, couldn't contradict Isabella's version of events. But a daughter who could talk, who was healing, who might eventually remember that Aunt Isabella had been the one to encourage her fears instead of soothing them, that was dangerous. She typed back, handling it. Isabella had watched Marcus from her window over the past 6 weeks. Watched him sit with Sophia on that bench, watched them count together, watched her niece smile for the first time since the invasion. It had taken everything in her not to intervene immediately, but she'd learned patience. Rushing had nearly ruined everything when Elena survived. This required subtlety. She'd researched Marcus Wright thoroughly. Former Marine, PTSD, dead family, current wife with Alzheimer's. A man barely scraping by before Dominic's charity elevated him. Men like that had weaknesses, exploitable pressure points. The question was which one to press. Isabella opened her laptop and began drafting an email to her lawyer, the one who handled delicate matters, the kind that didn't appear in official firm records. She needed documentation, evidence, the kind that would make Marcus Wright look like exactly what rich parents feared, a predator who'd gained access to a vulnerable child. It would be easy. A few doctored security logs showing Marcus taking Sophia off property without permission. Some carefully edited photos suggesting inappropriate contact. Anonymous tips to child services about a convicted criminal. She'd make sure he had a record by then, working unsupervised with a minor. Dominic's enemies would leak it to the media. She'd make sure of that. The tabloids would destroy Marcus before he could defend himself. And Sophia, watching her only source of safety destroyed, would retreat back into silence. Back into nightmares. Back into Isabella's carefully constructed web. A knock on the door interrupted her planning. Come in. Elena's nurse wheeled her sister through the doorway. Elena looked exhausted. She always did these days, but her eyes were sharp. They'd been getting sharper lately. Isabella didn't like it. I need to talk to you, Elena said, her voice still hoarse, but stronger than it had been in months. Of course. Isabella closed her laptop casually. What is it? Marcus, you don't like him. I don't know him well enough to have an opinion. Bullshit. Elena's hands trembled on her wheelchair's armrests. The paralysis had stolen her legs, but her upper body was fighting back. I see how you look at him, how you look at Sophia when she's with him. I'm concerned, Isabella said smoothly, walking to Elena's chair and kneeling beside her like the devoted sister she'd always pretended to be. This man came out of nowhere. Dominic barely vetted him. Sophia is vulnerable, and I just want to make sure she stays broken. The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Isabella's expression never changed. Years of practice, of hiding rage behind concern, of burying ambition under family loyalty. Elena, you're exhausted. The medication sometimes makes you confused. I'm not confused. Elena leaned forward, her body shaking with effort. I've been watching you for months. The way you whisper to Sophia about the bad men coming back. The way you leave her door open at night when you know she's terrified. The way you've undermined every treatment, every specialist. You're paranoid. I'm paralyzed, not stupid. Tears streamed down Elena's face. I couldn't speak, couldn't move enough to protect her, but I could watch. And I've been watching you destroy my daughter for 18 months. Isabella stood, smoothing her skirt. You should rest. You're clearly overwhelmed. You did this. Elena's voice cracked. The invasion. It was you. You gave them our security codes. You knew when Dominic would be gone. You told them where to find me. For just a moment, one unguarded second, Isabella's mask slipped. Her eyes went cold, calculating. The same expression she'd worn when she'd texted the Morales cartel the exact timing of Dominic's overseas meeting. Then she smiled. Those are serious accusations, Elena. Dangerous ones, especially for someone in your condition. I'll tell Dominic. Will you? Isabella circled the wheelchair slowly. Tell him what exactly? That you suspect your devoted sister of conspiracy based on, what? Feelings. Paranoid delusions brought on by trauma and medication. He already thinks you're fragile. One word from me about your mental state, about how the paralysis has affected your cognition, and you'll be in a psychiatric facility, so fast your head will spin. Elena's hands clenched. Marcus is helping her. Sophia is healing. For now. Isabella leaned down, her voice dropping to a whisper. But accidents happen, Elena. People disappoint us. And when Marcus Wright falls from grace, and he will, Sophia will need someone she can trust. Someone who's always been there. Someone like her devoted Aunt Isabella. You're a monster. I'm a survivor. Isabella straightened. This empire was supposed to be mine. I was the eldest, the capable one. But you married Dominic, and got everything. The wealth, the power, the pretty daughter. Well, you're paralyzed now. Dominic's drowning in guilt. And Sophia is the key to everything I should have had. Dominic will destroy you when he finds out. Finds out what? You have no proof. And even if you did, who would believe the traumatized invalid over the sister, who sacrificed everything to help? Isabella walked to the door, opened it. Now get some rest. You look terrible. Elena's nurse wheeled her out. Elena's face pale with rage and helplessness. Isabella closed the door and returned to her laptop. She pulled up the file on Marcus Wright, and began to plan his destruction, with the same methodical precision she'd used to orchestrate the home invasion. The old man had no idea what was coming. He'd survived Afghanistan, and house fires and PTSD, but he'd never survived someone like Isabella Cruz, someone willing to destroy a child's healing to secure an empire. She drafted the first anonymous tip to Child Services, kept it vague, concerning, enough to start an investigation. Then she texted her contact at the Miami Herald, the one who owed her favors, who'd publish anything for an exclusive. She'd leak Marcus's PTSD diagnosis, frame it as dangerous instability, suggest Dominic had recklessly endangered his daughter. The empire would be hers. Sophia would break again, and Marcus Wright would learn that in Isabella's world, good men finished destroyed. She hit send on the email and poured herself another whiskey. Outside her window, she could see the security gate where Marcus sat with Sophia, teaching her to count her breaths. Not for much longer. Chapter 4. The evidence materialized like clockwork over 3 days. First, the doctored security footage. Isabella's tech consultant, a former hacker who'd traded prison time for cooperation with the Vasquez organization, and now owed Isabella more favors than he could count, inserted 47 seconds of manipulated video into the estates. Camera logs. It showed Marcus leading Sophia toward the service entrance at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, his hand on her shoulder, her face obscured. Never mind that Marcus had been visiting Rose at the care facility that night, documented by sign-in sheets and nurse testimonies. The footage looked real enough to create reasonable doubt. Then came the burner phone, planted in Marcus's locker at the security office. 5 text messages to an unknown number discussing, quote, the package, and extraction at 0200 hours. Military language. The kind an old Marine might use. The kind that would make investigators' ears prick up when they were already primed to suspect him. Finally, the anonymous tip to Miami-Dade police. A concerned employee reporting suspicious behavior, an older security guard spending unusual amounts of time alone with the employer's 4-year-old daughter, whispers among staff about inappropriate attachment. Isabella had learned from the home invasion. Rushing created loose ends. This time she built her trap with patience, layering detail upon detail, until the narrative wrote itself. On Thursday morning, 2 detectives arrived at the Vasquez estate with a warrant. Marcus was at the gate with Sophia, teaching her to identify clouds. See that one, baby girl? That's a cumulonimbus. Big word, huh? Say it with me. Cumulonimbus. Sophia giggled, mangling the pronunciation. Cumulus nimbus. Close enough. Marcus grinned. Your daddy would be proud. That's some fancy. Marcus, right? The detective's voice cut through the morning, like a knife. Marcus stood slowly, instinctively positioning himself between the approaching officers and Sophia. That's me. Can I help you? We need you to come with us. We have some questions about your relationship with Sophia Vasquez. The world tilted. Marcus heard the words, but they didn't make sense, like someone speaking underwater. My relationship? I'm her companion. Mr. Vasquez hired me to. We're aware of your employment. The second detective's hand moved to her belt, resting near her cuffs. We have evidence suggesting you've been grooming the child for abduction. What? The word came out strangled. That's insane. I would never. Sir, we need you to turn around and place your hands behind your back. Sophia was staring, her small face draining of color. Marcus could see it happening. The shutdown starting behind her eyes. The retreat into the place she'd lived for 18 months before he'd taught her to breathe her way out. Wait. Marcus raised his hands slowly, palms out. Not in front of her. Please. She's been through trauma. Seeing this will. Turn around. Now. Marcus. Sophia's voice was tiny, cracking. What's happening? It's okay, baby girl. He tried to keep his voice steady, even as his hands were wrenched behind his back, even as the metal bit into his wrists. Just a misunderstanding. Everything's going to be. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Sophia started screaming. The sound ripped through the morning like something dying. She ran toward Marcus, but the female detective caught her, held her back as she thrashed and shrieked his name. Marcus, Marcus, no, bad men are taking Marcus. Sophia, listen to me. Marcus tried to turn, but the detective's grip was iron. Remember what I taught you. Count to 10. Breathe with me. 1, 2, 3. Get him in the car. They dragged him toward the unmarked sedan. Marcus craned his neck, desperate to keep Sophia in sight. She'd stopped screaming, but that was worse. Her mouth hung open in a silent wail, her entire body rigid with terror. The exact same posture she'd held for months after the home invasion. Sophia, baby girl, breathe. Just breathe. Count to 10. But she couldn't hear him. She'd gone somewhere far away, somewhere Marcus recognized, because he'd lived there after the fire, after Maria. The place where your mind goes, when the world proves it's not safe, when the people you trust get ripped away, when nothing makes sense, and everything hurts. The detective shoved Marcus into the back seat. Through the window he watched Sophia collapse to the ground, her body curling into itself, rocking slightly. The nanny rushed over, but Sophia didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge her presence. No, Marcus whispered. No. You're killing her. You don't understand what you're doing to her. Save it for your lawyer. The car pulled away. Marcus twisted in his seat, watching through the rear window as Sophia became a small, broken shape on the lawn, and then a dot, and then nothing. His chest felt like it was caving in. 20 years of therapy. 20 years of learning to breathe through panic. And all of it evaporated in the face of watching Sophia shatter because of him. He'd promised her she was safe. He'd taught her that adults could be trusted. He'd shown her how to breathe through fear. And now she'd watched her only source of safety dragged away in handcuffs, screaming her name, powerless to stop it. Just like the home invasion. Just like watching her mother's blood on marble floors. Just like every nightmare that had kept her silent for 18 months, Marcus had survived Afghanistan. He'd survived losing Maria. He'd survived the fire and the PTSD and the decades of grief. But watching what this was doing to Sophia, that might actually break him. Isabella watched from her bedroom window as the police car disappeared through the gates. Sophia lay on the lawn, unmoving. The nanny crouched beside her, trying to coax a response, but the child stared at nothing with eyes that had gone flat and dead. Perfect. Isabella sipped her coffee, savoring the expensive blend Dominic imported from Colombia. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. The police had the evidence. Marcus would be processed, arraigned, publicly destroyed, even if the charges didn't stick, and she'd made sure they were just credible enough to create doubt. The damage was done. Sophia had watched her savior arrested like a criminal. The trauma would compound. First the home invasion, now this betrayal. The child would never trust anyone again. She'd retreat so far into herself that no amount of breathing exercises or whistled lullabies could reach her. And Isabella would be there, the devoted aunt, The only constant in Sophia's broken world. The patient guardian waiting to shepherd her through years of continued trauma, until the girl was old enough to sign legal documents making Isabella the executor of the Vasquez empire. Her phone buzzed. A text from her Morales contact. "Clean work. The old man won't recover from this." Isabella typed back. "Neither will the kid." As planned. Dominic's car screeched into the driveway, his Mercedes slamming to a stop near where Sophia lay. He exploded from the driver's seat, running to his daughter, scooping her up. She didn't resist, but she didn't respond either. Just limp, eyes unfocused, breathing shallow. "Sophia, baby, what happened? Talk to me." Dominic's voice carried across the lawn, raw with panic. Isabella set down her coffee and arranged her face into appropriate concern. Time to play the worried aunt. She found Dominic in Sophia's room, sitting on the bed, with his daughter cradled against his chest. Sophia stared at the wall. Didn't blink, didn't cry. Just stared. "What the hell happened?" Dominic demanded. "The nanny said police arrested Marcus?" "I'm so sorry, Dominic." Isabella's voice dripped with carefully measured distress. "I didn't want to believe it either, but the evidence. They said he was planning to take her, that he'd been grooming her. That's impossible. Marcus wouldn't. I know you trusted him. We all did. But his background, the PTSD, the trauma, maybe working with Sophia triggered something unstable. I saw the security footage they showed me, him leading her toward the service entrance late at night. The texts on his phone, about extraction plans." Dominic's face went white. "Show me." "The police took everything." "But Dominic," she moved closer, placed a hand on his shoulder. "Look at her. Look at what seeing him arrested did to her. She's exactly like she was after the invasion. If he had her best interests at heart, would his arrest cause this kind of regression? It was masterful manipulation. Plant the seed, let Dominic's guilt and fear water it." He looked down at Sophia. She hadn't moved, hadn't acknowledged either of them, just stared with those dead eyes at nothing. "Sophia, baby." Dominic's voice cracked. "Can you hear Daddy? Say something. Anything." "Nothing. Count to 10 for me, like Marcus taught you. Please." "Nothing." Isabella watched Dominic break, watched him realize that 6 weeks of progress had evaporated in 6 minutes. His daughter was gone again, retreated to that unreachable place, and this time there was no Gateman to teach her how to breathe her way back. "I'll call the specialists," Isabella said gently. "The ones from Stanford, from Tel Aviv. We'll get her the help she needs." The help that wouldn't work. The help that would keep Sophia broken and dependent and controllable. Dominic just nodded, holding his silent daughter, and Isabella smiled inwardly. Marcus Wright was destroyed. Sophia was shattered. And Isabella Cruz was one step closer to everything she'd been owed. Outside, storm clouds gathered over Biscayne Bay, and Sophia stared at nothing while her father begged her to breathe. Chapter 5. Sophia stopped eating on Friday. The pediatrician arrived Saturday morning, took one look at the child lying motionless in her bed, and said words that made Dominic's blood freeze. "If she doesn't take fluids by tomorrow, we'll need to hospitalize her. IV nutrition. She's shutting down." Dominic sat beside his daughter's bed, holding her small hand. It was limp, unresponsive. Her eyes were open but vacant, staring at the ceiling like she was watching something no one else could see. He'd tried everything. Her favorite foods, her stuffed rabbit, begging, pleading, bargaining with a god he'd stopped believing in decades ago. Nothing. "Sophia, please." His voice was hoarse from 3 days of constant talking, trying to reach her through whatever dark place she'd retreated to. "Just one bite. One sip of water. Please, baby. Daddy needs you to try." Her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. That was the only sign she was still alive. The nanny appeared in the doorway, her face drawn with exhaustion. "Mr. Vasquez, Mrs. Elena is asking for you. She says it's urgent." "Not now, sir. She's speaking." Actually speaking. I've never heard her voice before. Dominic's head snapped up. Elena hadn't spoken since the invasion. 18 months of silence. Her trauma manifesting differently than Sophia's, but just as profound. The doctor said she physically could speak, that the paralysis hadn't affected her vocal cords, but something psychological had locked her voice away. Until now. He found Elena in her room, propped up in the wheelchair by her nurse. Her face was streaked with tears, her hands trembling violently on the armrests. When she saw him, her mouth opened and sound came out, rough, unpracticed, desperate. It was Isabella. The words were barely more than a croak, but they hit Dominic like a sledgehammer. "What? The invasion?" Elena's voice cracked. 18 months of disuse, making every syllable painful. "Isabella planned it, gave them our codes, told them when you'd be gone, wanted me dead." Dominic crossed the room in 3 strides, kneeling beside the wheelchair. Elena, are you sure? The trauma, the medication, I'm sure. Tears poured down her face. Been watching, for months. Couldn't speak. Couldn't move enough. To warn you. But I watched. The way she keeps Sophia scared. Whispers about bad men coming back. Undermines every treatment. Why didn't you? Couldn't. The word came out as a sob. Couldn't make my mouth work. Trapped in my body. Watching her destroy our daughter. And now Marcus. She gasped for air. The effort of speaking clearly exhausting her. The arrest wasn't real. Isabella framed him. I heard her. On the phone. She orchestrated everything. Dominic's world tilted. That's impossible. Isabella is family. She's been helping. She wants the empire. Elena grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. Through Sophia. Control the child. Control everything. Marcus was healing her. Undoing 18 months of Isabella keeping her broken. So Isabella destroyed him. Elena. Sophia is dying, Dominic. Her voice rose, stronger now, despite the rasp. Our daughter is dying, because she watched the only person who made her feel safe get dragged away. And Isabella is smiling. I saw her, standing at her window, watching Sophia collapse, and she smiled. Dominic felt something cold and terrible crystallize in his chest. If this is true, check the security footage. Real footage, not what she showed police. Check her phone records. Check everything. Elena's voice broke. Please. Before Sophia. Before we lose her forever. Dominic locked himself in his office with his head of security, a former NSA analyst, who owed him more than one life-altering favor. I need you to pull all security footage from the past 3 months, Dominic said. Everything. Including deleted files, archived data, anything that might have been altered. Looking for something specific? Proof that my sister-in-law is trying to destroy my family. The analyst's fingers flew across keyboards. The footage the police showed of Marcus leading Sophia toward the service entrance. It was good work. Almost professional. But there's metadata inconsistencies. Timestamps don't align with other camera feeds from the same night. Someone spliced this together. Can you find the original? Give me an hour. 40 minutes later, the analyst pulled up the real footage from that Tuesday night. It showed Marcus's locker at the security office, empty at 11 p.m., because Marcus had signed out at 6 p.m. to visit Rose at the care facility. The doctored footage of him with Sophia was an overlay, digitally inserted. Someone paid good money for this, the analyst said. Military-grade editing software, not something you download off the internet. What about the burner phone they found in his locker? Let me check access logs for the security office. More typing. Then the analyst froze. What? Isabella Cruz entered the security office at 3 a.m. last Wednesday. Used her access card. Was inside for 6 minutes. The same day before Marcus was arrested. The same locker, where police found the phone. Show me her phone records. The analyst hesitated. Sir, that's... Show me. The records appeared on screen. Dozens of calls to an unlisted number over the past 20 months. The analyst ran the number through their databases. It's registered to Mateo Morales. As in Morales cartel. Dominic's hands clenched into fists. When did the calls start? First one is 2 weeks before the home invasion. The room went silent except for the hum of computers. Pull the call from the night of the invasion, Dominic said quietly. The analyst's face paled. Sir, if this shows what I think it shows, pull it. The recorded call played through the speakers. Isabella's voice, calm and precise. They'll arrive home in 40 minutes. Dominic is in Bogota until tomorrow. Security rotation changes at 10 p.m. The north entrance will be unwatched for 12 minutes. Elena will be in the bedroom with Sophia. Make it quick. Mateo's response. And you're sure about this? Your own sister? She took what should have been mine. Consider it a correction. Dominic listened to the entire call. Listened to Isabella give detailed security protocols, room layouts, Elena's exact location. Listened to her specify that it needed to look like cartel retaliation, that Dominic's enemies needed to be blamed. When it ended, Dominic sat motionless. There's more, the analyst said quietly. Text messages from last week. Isabella to Mateo. The old man is reaching the kid. Need him eliminated. We'll handle evidence. Show me everything. Every call, every text, every financial transaction. The full scope of Isabella's conspiracy unfolded across the screens. 18 months of planning. Payments to the Morales cartel totaling $2.3 million from Isabella's offshore accounts. Detailed discussions about positioning herself as Sophia's guardian. Plans to eventually broker territorial agreements once she controlled the Vasquez empire through a traumatized, easily manipulated child. And throughout it all, deliberate sabotage. Text messages to the Stanford psychiatrist suggesting Sophia was too fragile for certain therapies. Emails to the Tel Aviv specialist claiming treatments were making Sophia worse. Anonymous tips to the Swiss clinic that Dominic was considering pulling funding. Isabella had systematically undermined every attempt to heal Sophia because a broken child served her purposes better than a healthy one. Dominic stood slowly. His voice, when he spoke, was the same tone he used when ordering executions. Where is she now? Her location services show she's at the mansion. Her suite. Locked down the estate. No one leaves. Especially not Isabella. Sir, what are you? She tried to kill my wife. She's been torturing my daughter for 18 months. She destroyed the one man who could help Sophia heal. Dominic's hands shook with rage. And right now, my daughter is dying because of what Isabella did to Marcus. He pulled out his phone and dialed his lawyer. I need you to get Marcus Wright released. Now. I don't care what it takes. Bribe judges, threaten prosecutors, burn every favor we have. Get him out. Dominic, the charges are fabricated by my sister-in-law, who orchestrated the home invasion that paralyzed my wife. I have proof. Get Marcus out, and get child services to drop their investigation, or I swear to God I'll make your life a living hell. He hung up and called his doctor. Sophia needs to see Marcus. Today. It's life or death. Then he walked toward Isabella's suite, his head of security following, and somewhere in his chest where his humanity used to live, Dominic felt the cold comfort of knowing exactly how he'd handle family betrayal. The way he'd always handled it, with absolute, merciless precision. But first, he had to save his daughter's life by bringing back the man Isabella had tried to destroy. Chapter 6. The call came at 4 a.m. Dominic's head of security burst into his office, where he'd been reviewing evidence for hours, his face ashen. Sophia's gone. Isabella took her. What? The nanny just checked. Sophia's bed is empty. Security footage shows Isabella carrying her to a car 20 minutes ago. Black SUV, no plates. Dominic was on his feet, adrenaline flooding his system. Where? Traffic cameras tracked them heading east, on the Dolphin Expressway. Toward the airport. She's running. Dominic grabbed his phone. Cuba. Isabella has contacts in Havana. If she gets Sophia on a plane, we've contacted TSA, but she's got a 2-hour head start. Private terminal, probably already through security. Dominic's mind raced. Isabella knew he had the evidence. Elena's confession, the phone records, everything. She was cutting her losses, disappearing with the one asset that mattered, Sophia. In Cuba, beyond Dominic's reach, she could vanish for years. Remake identities. Keep Sophia traumatized and dependent until the child was old enough to sign over the empire. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Vasquez. Mr. Vasquez, it's Marcus. The voice was rough, labored. I'm out. Your lawyer got the charges dropped an hour ago. But when I went to the estate to check on Sophia, the guard said, Isabella took her. Miami International. She's fleeing to Cuba. Silence. Then, which terminal? Private aviation, north side. But Marcus, you can't. I'm already in my truck. I'll be there in 15 minutes. The police are handling it. You're in no condition to. With respect, sir, the police will file paperwork while Isabella gets your daughter on a plane. I spent 20 years tracking targets in Afghanistan. I can find one scared little girl in an airport. The line went dead. Marcus drove like the devil was chasing him, which wasn't far from the truth. His ribs screamed where Isabella's thugs had broken them 3 days ago. 2 hired muscle who'd cornered him in the jail cell, delivering a message that Marcus's interference in family matters wouldn't be tolerated. He'd survived worse in Kandahar, but 62-year-old bones didn't heal like they used to. His left shoulder was dislocated, but he'd popped it back in himself in the jail bathroom, biting through a leather belt to keep from screaming. The pain was a white-hot constant, but pain didn't matter. Sophia mattered. The image of her collapsing on the lawn as they dragged him away haunted every breath. He'd promised her she was safe. He'd taught her to trust adults again. And then she'd watched him get arrested like a criminal, screaming her name, unable to protect her. If she died thinking he'd abandoned her, Marcus didn't know if he could survive that. Miami International appeared through the dawn haze. Marcus parked illegally, ignored the security guard's shouts, and ran toward the private aviation terminal. His Marine training kicked in. Scan for exits, identify security cameras, track movement patterns. There, through the glass windows of the executive lounge, Isabella in dark sunglasses and a scarf, holding Sophia's hand. The child was limp, unresisting, that same 1,000-yard stare Marcus recognized from the months before he'd taught her to breathe. 2 bodyguards flanked them. Armed, professional. Former military, by the way, they moved. Marcus's phone buzzed. Text from Dominic. FBI en route. 10 minutes. Don't engage. 10 minutes might as well be 10 hours. The departure board showed a private flight to Havana boarding in 5 minutes. Marcus didn't have time for backup. He entered through the side door, head down. Just another tired traveler. Moved through the terminal using other passengers as cover. Got within 20 feet before one of Isabella's bodyguards spotted him. Contact. 3 o'clock. Isabella's head snapped around. Even through the sunglasses, Marcus saw her eyes widen with shock and rage. She hadn't expected him out of jail. Certainly hadn't expected him here. Marcus. Sophia's voice cut through the terminal. Small, broken, desperate. She'd seen him. Her entire body came alive, straining toward him. Marcus, please, please don't leave me again. It's okay, baby girl. Marcus kept walking forward, hands visible, non-threatening. I'm right here. I'm not leaving. Stop right there. The bodyguard's hand moved to his jacket. Turn around and walk away, old man. Can't do that. Marcus kept his eyes on Sophia. That little girl needs to come home. Last warning. Sophia, remember what I taught you. Marcus raised his voice so she could hear. When you're scared, what do? We breathe, she whispered. That's right. Count with me. 1, 2, 3. The bodyguard drew his weapon. Everything happened in seconds. The other bodyguard pulled his gun. Passengers screamed. Marcus dove forward, not away, covering the 20 feet to Sophia faster than a man with broken ribs should move. Isabella yanked Sophia backward, but Marcus was already there, his body between the child and the guns, scooping her up with his good arm as the first shot rang out. The bullet caught him in the left thigh. He felt the impact, the white-hot tear of metal through muscle, but kept moving, carried Sophia behind a check-in counter, his body curled around hers. It's okay, baby girl. Blood spread across his pants, but his voice stayed steady. We're gonna breathe through this, just like we practiced. A second shot. This one hit his lower back, just above his hip. His legs buckled, but he stayed upright, pressing Sophia against the counter. 1. His voice shook. 2, 3. Breathe. Sophia was crying, but she counted with him. 4, 5, 6. That's my girl. Hold. The third bullet caught his abdomen. Marcus gasped, his hand instinctively moving to the wound. Blood, warm and wet, poured between his fingers. 7, 8. Marcus, you're bleeding. Sophia's voice rose to a shriek. It's okay. He could feel himself fading. Shock setting in. Keep counting. 9, 10. Release. TSA agents tackled the bodyguards. More shots. Chaos. Marcus heard it all from a distance, his entire focus on the small girl in his arms, who needed to know she was safe. Again, he whispered. Count again. 1, 2, 3. Breathe. Sophia's small hands pressed against his chest, trying to stop the bleeding. Marcus, please don't leave. Please don't be like Mama. Please. Not leaving. Every word cost him. Never leaving you. 4, 5, 6. FBI agents swarmed the terminal. Someone was shouting Isabella's name, reading rights. Marcus heard her screaming about lawyers, about diplomatic immunity, about how they had no proof. But he didn't care about Isabella. He cared about Sophia's face inches from his, her brown eyes locked on his, counting her breaths, even as his own breathing became ragged and shallow. 7, 8. His vision blurred. 9, 10. Sophia sobbed. Marcus, 10. We did it. Good girl. He tried to smile. So proud of you. Paramedics arrived. Hands pulled Sophia away and she fought them, screaming his name. Marcus tried to reach for her, but his arm wouldn't move right. Sir, stay still. You've been shot 3 times. We need to. Sophia. Marcus forced the words out. Keep her safe. Teach her. It's okay to be scared. Okay to breathe through it. Sir, save your strength. But he couldn't. Not until he saw Dominic's face appear above him. Tears streaming down the crime lord's face as he knelt beside the gurney. I got her. Dominic choked. Isabella's arrested. It's over. Promise me. Marcus grabbed Dominic's collar with blood-slick fingers. That little girl, she don't need money, don't need bodyguards. She needs you, to be there, to teach her. It's okay to be scared, okay to breathe through it. Promise me. I promise. Dominic's voice broke completely. I swear to God, Marcus, I'll do better. Marcus squeezed his hand, then let the darkness take him. The last thing he heard was Sophia's voice, small and clear despite her tears, counting her breaths like he'd taught her. 1, 2, 3, breathe. And Marcus smiled. Because she was breathing, she was still breathing. That meant he'd done his job. That meant maybe, somehow, he'd saved her after all. Chapter 7. Marcus survived the first surgery, then the second, then the third, when internal bleeding nearly killed him, 48 hours post-op. The doctors said it was a miracle. 3 bullets, massive blood loss, a 62-year-old body already compromised by broken ribs and decades of hard living. By all statistical measures, Marcus Wright should have died on that airport floor. But he didn't. He lay in the ICU, tubes and wires, connecting him to machines that beeped steady rhythms, and every time the nurses checked on him, he asked the same question. Sophia? She's safe, Mr. Wright. Rest now. But Marcus couldn't rest. Not until he knew Sophia was okay. Not until he heard her voice counting breaths. Not until he was sure she understood he hadn't abandoned her. On the third day, they moved him out of critical care. Dominic visited that afternoon, looking like he hadn't slept since the airport. His eyes were red-rimmed, his usually immaculate suit rumpled, but he carried something carefully wrapped in tissue paper. She made this for you. Dominic placed it on Marcus's bedside table. Marcus turned his head. Even that small movement hurt, and saw a child's drawing. Sophia had used every crayon in the box. A stick figure man with gray hair holding hands with a small girl, both surrounded by numbers 1 through 10 written in her careful, shaky handwriting. At the top, in letters that wandered across the page, Marcus Teached me to breath. Breathe, Dominic corrected quietly, staring at the drawing. She spells it breath. Marcus felt tears slide down his face. Is she talking? Some. Mostly to Elena. She asks about you constantly. Wants to know when you're coming home. Dominic's voice roughened. She thinks the mansion is your home now. That you live with us. I don't. You do, when you're well enough. Dominic sat in the visitor's chair, and Marcus saw something dangerous in his eyes. Isabella's in federal custody. The FBI has enough evidence to put her away for life. Conspiracy to commit murder. Attempted kidnapping. Everything. Good. But she didn't act alone. Dominic leaned forward, his hands clasped tight enough that his knuckles went white. The Morales cartel helped her. They sent the men who invaded my home, who tortured my wife, who traumatized my daughter. Isabella gave them intel, but they pulled the triggers. Marcus's chest tightened. He knew that tone. He'd heard it in Afghanistan from Marines, about to do something that couldn't be undone. Mr. Vasquez. Dominic. Call me Dominic. Dominic. Whatever you're thinking. I'm thinking they need to pay. Dominic's voice dropped to something cold and final. Isabella will rot in prison, but the animals who actually hurt my family, who took 18 months of Sophia's childhood, who put Elena in a wheelchair, they're still out there. Still operating. Still thinking they can touch the Vasquez family without consequences. Revenge won't help Sophia. No. But justice will. Dominic stood. I just wanted you to know. In case things don't go as planned. I've arranged everything. Legal guardianship papers for Sophia. They name you as primary guardian if anything happens to me and Elena. The house, trust funds, everything she needs. It's all set up. Dominic, wait. You saved her life, Marcus. Twice. Once by teaching her to breathe, and once by taking bullets meant for her. You're the only person she trusts completely. Dominic's eyes glistened. If I can't be there, I need to know she'll have someone who understands what she's been through. Someone who won't try to fix her with money or power, but will just sit with her. Teach her it's okay to be scared. You're talking like you're not coming back. Dominic smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm talking like a man who knows the empire I built has consequences. And sometimes those consequences catch up with you. He left before Marcus could respond. The ambush happened in Overtown, in a warehouse the Morales cartel used for cocaine distribution. Dominic had tracked them there with his security team. 8 men, all former military, all loyal. They walked into a trap. Mateo Morales had been expecting them. Of course he had. When Isabella was arrested, she'd given up everything to try to cut a deal, including detailed information about her arrangement with the cartel. Mateo knew Dominic would come for revenge, so he'd prepared. The shooting started before Dominic's team cleared the entrance. Muzzle flashes from elevated positions, automatic weapons, the kind of coordinated ambush that spoke to military training. Dominic's men returned fire, but they were outgunned and outmaneuvered. 2 went down in the first 30 seconds, 3 more within a minute. Dominic took cover behind a concrete pillar, his Glock in one hand, phone in the other. Blood spread across his shirt. He'd been hit. Couldn't tell where exactly, but it didn't matter. He dialed Marcus. The phone rang twice. Marcus's voice, groggy with painkillers. Dominic? What? Listen to me. Dominic's words came fast, punctuated by gunfire. I don't have much time. I need you to promise me something. Where are you? What's happening? Promise me, you'll take care of Sophia. Be her guardian, her grandfather. The man who teaches her that breathing through fear is braver than fighting with violence. Dominic, what did you do? A bullet hit the pillar inches from Dominic's head, spraying concrete dust. He could hear Matteo shouting orders, coordinating his men to flank Dominic's position. I did what I always do. I chose violence. And it's killing me, Marcus. Literally killing me. Dominic laughed, bitter and broken. I spent my whole life building an empire on fear and blood, and it made my family targets. The invasion, Isabella's betrayal, all of it. It happened because of what I am. What I built. Then get out of there. Come back. Be different. Too late for me. Another burst of gunfire. Dominic felt impact. His leg this time. He went down, back against the pillar. But not for Sophia. You can teach her different. Teach her that survival isn't about power or revenge. It's about breathing through the fear and choosing to stay anyway. Dominic. She needs you, Marcus. Not my money, not my empire. Just you, the broken Marine, who learned to survive his own hell and taught a traumatized 4-year-old that healing is possible. Dominic's breathing was labored now. Promise me. I promise. Marcus's voice cracked. But you need to get to a hospital. Tell me where you are, and I'll... The compass. In my office. Top drawer. It was my grandfather's. Give it to Sophia when she's older. Teach her it's for finding direction when you're lost. When the violence, and the money, and all the bullshit try to tell her who she should be, teach her to find her own direction. Dominic, please. Thank you, Marcus. For saving her. For being the man I should have been. Footsteps approaching. Matteo's voice. Nowhere left to run, Vasquez. Dominic dropped the phone but didn't end the call. He wanted Marcus to hear this. Needed someone to bear witness. You killed my wife, Dominic said, standing on his shattered leg, raising his gun. Paralyzed her. Traumatized my daughter. Isabella paid us to send a message. Matteo stepped into view, flanked by 4 armed men. Business, nothing personal. Everything's personal when it's family. Dominic fired. Got one shot off before they lit him up. Automatic weapons, overwhelming force, the same brutal efficiency he'd employed 100 times himself. He died thinking about Sophia. About how she'd wave at Marcus from across the lawn. About how her voice sounded when she counted breaths. About how maybe, just maybe, Marcus could teach her to build something better than an empire built on blood. Marcus listened to it all through the phone. Heard the gunfire. Heard Dominic's last breath. Heard Matteo's men confirming the kill. Then silence. The nurse found him 10 minutes later, still holding the phone, tears streaming down his face. She tried to take it, to check his vitals, but Marcus just shook his head. Call Elena Vasquez, he whispered. Tell her Dominic's gone. And tell her I'll keep my promise. The nurse didn't understand, but she made the call. And Marcus lay there, staring at Sophia's crayon drawing, understanding with terrible clarity that the little girl who'd learned to breathe again had just lost her father to the same violence that had traumatized her in the first place. The empire Dominic built had finally consumed him. Now it was up to a broken Marine to teach his daughter that there was another way. That breathing through fear was braver than fighting. That choosing to survive was its own kind of victory. Chapter 8. The Miami sun turned the cemetery grass golden as Marcus held Sophia's hand, walking slowly between the headstones. His legs still ached where the bullet had torn through muscle. Probably always would, but he'd learned decades ago that some pain you just carried. Sophia wore a yellow dress, the same color as the one she'd had on the day they first counted breaths together at the security gate. She'd grown in 6 months. Not just taller, but stronger somehow. Her voice came easier now. Her smiles more frequent, though the nightmares still visited some nights. On those nights, they sat together in the small house Marcus had bought in Coral Gables. Nothing like the mansion, just a 3-bedroom with a yard where Sophia could play, and they counted 1 through 10, over and over, until the fear became manageable and sleep became possible again. Is this it, abuelo? Sophia pointed at the granite headstone. Marcus's chest tightened every time she called him that. Grandfather. He'd never expected to hear that word again after Maria died. Never imagined a 4-year-old girl would claim him as family, would choose him, despite all the broken pieces he carried. Yeah, baby girl, this is it. The headstone was simple, despite the fortune Dominic had left behind. Elena had insisted. No ostentatious displays, no marble angels, nothing that screamed wealth and power. Just his name, his dates, and a single line Sophia had chosen. He taught me people matter more than empires. Sophia knelt on the grass, placing the flowers she'd picked that morning. Wildflowers from their yard, not expensive roses from a florist. Marcus had taught her that the thought mattered more than the price tag. Hi, Papa, she said softly. It's me, Sophia. I'm 6 now. Well, almost 6. My birthday is next week, and Abuelo says we can have cake. Marcus stood back, giving her space. The lawyers had fought the guardianship at first. A working-class veteran with PTSD raising the heir to the Vasquez fortune seemed absurd to men in expensive suits. But Elena had supported it from her wheelchair, her voice growing stronger every day as she relearned how to use it. Marcus understands what Sophia needs, Elena had told the judge. Not specialists or tutors, or the best money can buy. She needs someone who knows how to survive trauma, who can teach her that being broken doesn't mean being worthless. The judge had agreed. Marcus became Sophia's legal guardian, with Elena maintaining parental rights and visiting twice a week. They'd sold the mansion, too many bad memories, too much blood-stained marble. The Vasquez empire had been systematically dismantled, its assets liquidated, the money distributed to victims' families per Dominic's final instructions. Isabella was serving life without parole. The Morales cartel had been destroyed in a multi-agency raid 2 weeks after Dominic's death. Justice, cold and final. But it didn't bring Dominic back. I learned my multiplication tables, Sophia continued, talking to the headstone like her father could hear. And I'm reading chapter books now. Abuelo takes me to the library every Saturday. We read together before bed. Marcus pulled the compass from his pocket. Dominic's grandfather's compass, brass and worn, the only expensive thing Marcus owned. He'd found it in Dominic's office exactly where the dying man said it would be, with a note, for Sophia. Teach her to find her own direction. I still have nightmares sometimes, Sophia said quietly. About the bad men. About watching them hurt Mama. About when they took you away, Abuelo, and I thought you were never coming back. Marcus knelt beside her, his scarred hand on her small shoulder. But Abuelo taught me what to do when I'm scared. Sophia's voice strengthened. We count to 10. We breathe. And we remember that being afraid is okay. That it doesn't make us weak. That's right, baby girl. Papa, I wanted to ask you something. Sophia touched the headstone gently. Do you think you'd be proud of me? For learning to breathe through the scary parts? For still being here even when it's hard? Marcus's throat closed up. He saw Sophia's brown eyes, so much like Elena's, so much like Dominic's, staring at the granite, waiting for an answer her father couldn't give. He'd be so proud, Marcus said softly. Your papa's last words to me were about you, about how brave you are, how strong. He called you from the bad place, didn't he? The place where he died. They'd never hidden the truth from Sophia. She deserved honesty, not fairy tales. She knew her father had died confronting the men who'd hurt her family. Knew he'd chosen violence in the end, just like the violence he'd built his empire on. Yeah, he called me. Marcus pulled Sophia onto his lap, holding her the way he used to hold Maria. And you know what he said? He said I needed to teach you something real important. What? That breathing through fear is braver than fighting with violence. That choosing to survive, to heal, to keep going even when you're scared, that takes more courage than all the guns and money and power in the world. Sophia was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, is that why you don't have bodyguards? Why we live in a small house instead of the big one? That's part of it. The big house had too many bad memories, too much of your papa's old life. We needed something different, something that was just ours. I like our house. Sophia leaned against his chest. It feels safe, like nobody's gonna hurt us there. That's because it's built on something different than your papa's empire. It's built on us choosing to be there, choosing each other. No violence, no fear, just breathing through it together. Sophia picked up the flowers she'd brought, arranging them carefully against a headstone. Abuelo, can I tell you something? Anything, baby girl. Sometimes I'm glad you're not rich. The specialists Papa hired before you, they didn't understand. They tried to fix me like I was broken. But you just sat with me, taught me it was okay to be scared, made me feel like I wasn't alone. Marcus had to look away, blinking hard. Your papa figured that out eventually. That's why he made me your guardian. Because he realized all his money couldn't buy what you really needed. What did I need? Someone who understood. Someone who'd been scared too and learned how to keep breathing anyway. Sophia turned in his lap, her small hands cupping his weathered face. You were scared. Even in the war? Especially in the war. And after, when I lost my first family. I was scared for a real long time, Sophia. Scared I'd never be okay again. But I learned, being scared doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. And learning to breathe through it, to keep going anyway, that's what makes you strong. Like you're strong. Like we're both strong. You and me, we're survivors. Sophia hugged him tight, and Marcus held her, this child who wasn't his by blood, but was his by choice, by survival, by the 10-second breathing technique that had saved them both. Papa? Sophia spoke to the headstone one more time. Abuelo says your greatest gift wasn't the money or the big house. He says it was realizing that people who teach us to breathe are worth more than empires. I think he's right. I think you'd think so too if you could tell us. The wind picked up, rustling through the palm trees overhead, and for a moment Marcus could almost hear Dominic's voice from that last phone call. Thank you, Marcus, for being the man I should have been. Marcus stood slowly, Sophia in his arms, the compass warm in his pocket. Time to go home, baby girl. Will we come back to visit Papa whenever you want? They walked through the cemetery together, Sophia's hand in his, and Marcus thought about all the money Dominic had spent trying to save his daughter. 4 million on specialists, tens of millions on the mansion, the security, the empire built to protect his family. And in the end, what saved Sophia was a minimum wage gateman with PTSD who knew how to count to 10. Marcus pulled out the compass as they reached his truck, not a Mercedes, just a reliable Ford he'd bought used. He showed Sophia how it worked, how the needle always found north no matter how lost you were. This was your papa's, he said, and his grandfather's before that. He wanted you to have it, to remember that when you're lost, when you're scared, when the world feels like it's drowning you, you can always find direction. You can always find your way. Sophia held the compass carefully, watching the needle settle. How do I know which direction to go? You breathe, you count to 10, and you choose the direction that feels like home. What if I choose wrong? Marcus smiled. Then you breathe again, and you choose different. That's the thing about surviving, baby girl. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep breathing. They drove home through the Miami afternoon, and Sophia practiced with the compass, learning to find north. And Marcus taught her that sometimes the most valuable things you own aren't expensive at all. Sometimes they're just a simple tool for finding your way. And sometimes they're the people who teach you how to breathe when everything feels impossible. Those people, the ones who sit with you in the dark and count to 10, they're worth more than all the empires ever built. They're worth everything. The compass. Marcus and Sophia sat at their kitchen table that evening, practicing the 10-second breathing together, while watching the sunset paint their small backyard golden. The compass rested between them. Not in an expensive display case, just a working tool Marcus used to teach Sophia about finding direction when you're lost. Rose had passed peacefully 2 months after Dominic's death, finally released from the Alzheimer's that had stolen her memories. Marcus visited her grave every Sunday, bringing Sophia along, teaching her that grief was just another thing you learned to breathe through. Elena was walking again, slowly, with a cane, but walking. She'd join them for dinner twice a week, and Sophia was learning that broken things could heal if you gave them time and patience and the space to try. The mansion was gone. The empire was dismantled. Isabella would die in prison. But Sophia was breathing, speaking, laughing, healing one 10-second count at a time. And Marcus, the minimum wage gateman who'd lost everything and learned to survive anyway, had become abuelo to a little girl who needed to know that trauma didn't define you, that breathing through fear was its own kind of victory, that family wasn't about blood or money, but about who stayed and taught you how to keep going when everything felt impossible. Sometimes, when the nightmares came, they still sat together in the dark. 1, 2, 3, breathe. And sometimes that was enough. Sometimes 10 seconds of genuine understanding was worth more than all the millions in the world. What did you think of Marcus and Sophia's story? Drop a comment below about a time when a small act of kindness made a bigger difference than money ever could. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful tales about the unexpected heroes who change lives, not through wealth or power, but through simple human connection. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that healing doesn't require perfection, just the courage to keep breathing through the hard parts. Your next story is waiting. Don't miss it. Subscribe now.